Hello makers, Ruth here. In this video, we're going to be making some fabric wrapped pendants. Now, this is something that you can make for like a pin to your shirt, or you can make as a necklace, designed for a necklace. Either way would be really cute. You can also use these for other things as well. Here's an example of what we'll be making today. You can see it's just several different size circles that I've wrapped in fabric scraps that create a really nice collage together. So let's talk about supplies. There's a couple of illustrated instructions that we want to kind of follow along with today. One is basically our recipe card, right? We have our supplies listed at the top, and then that process is laid out step by step. Of course, in this video, I'll be walking us through it, but this is good to kind of hang on to and reference back to. The next one that I want to point out is the template. So there are a couple options here. You can either do circles or like a rounded square. Either way is good. And so this is kind of the size guide. Now, the truth is you don't have to use this as a size guide. It's kind of a starting place. I think when I was designing it, I used like a Mod Podge bottle and a spray bottle and a glue stick to come up with the sizes. So feel free to kind of create your own size also. This is just a good starting place. We're going to use this as our template, as our guide. We'll also need some fabric scraps. Now you can use solid color fabric, you can use pattern fabric. You can see I've got some different sizes, little scraps that I've been kind of collecting. That's one of the great things about this project is that you can use like discarded pieces. It doesn't have to be a huge piece of anything. So little fabric scraps are ideal. The cardboard that I'm going to use to wrap the fabric in is just a cardboard from a cereal box. You don't need a whole lot. You can see I just have one little piece of cardboard, something that's big enough to make a few circles. Now, you want to make sure that at least one side is solid in color. Because some of the fabric scraps that we may be working with might be thin, and I'll show an example here. Might be thin, so when you wrap it, you may start to see some of the writing from underneath show through. So make sure when you are collecting your thin cardboard that you have a solid color side. Right? And if it's not a solid color side, you may want to paint it or put some paper on top just so that writing or color doesn't show through. So we need our fabric scraps. We need some thin cardboard. I used a cereal box, but you can use a popcorn box. You can use a soda can box or a mac and cheese box. You just want that thin cardboard. The next supply we need is going to be a pair of scissors to cut our template, cut our cardboard, and cut our fabric. And then that last supply we need is going to be our glue stick. I like using glue sticks because they dry quickly, but feel free to use any type of glue. A tacky glue works, hot glue works. There's a lot of different glues that'll work for this process. All right. One thing that's helpful that you can kind of bring in is a marker or a pencil. I'm going to be using a marker so it's easier to see on camera, but know that you can use a pencil too. I'm just going to be tracing those circles, those templates. So I'm going to kind of clear my space a little bit. And I'm going to start with my template. So I'm going to use the square template today. And so I'm going to start off by cutting those squares out. Now, here's the thing. Oh, one thing to think of. The number of circles, squares that you use. I'm using 6. I'm going to be doing all of these. I've got one that's really large, and then they're kind of shrinking in size as they go down. The reason for that is so it gives us this kind of like eye-catching shape. Now, the truth is you don't have to have a variety of sizes. If you want all big ones, that's perfect. If you want all small ones, that's also perfect. Feel free to kind of go off on your own as well. I'm going to be following along with this today, so I'm going to try and cut these kind of close. I'm going to do all 6 of these squares. So if you have your template or if you're making your own shapes and sizes, go ahead right now and kind of cut those out. Now, they don't have to be perfect. Like I said, I'm just using this kind of as a starting place for me. So while I'm cutting these out, I want to talk just a little bit about the type of fabric to use. So if you got the kit, in the kit are different pieces of cotton. Cotton works really well. Anything that has a little bit of a texture will work real well. If you want to use something that's thicker, like upholstery or corduroy, you can do that. It just might take a little more glue. So a tacky glue may be a better option than a glue stick. However, a glue stick isn't like totally off limits. You can see with my example here, I have corduroy that I use, and I was able to use the glue stick to hold it down, but I just had to hold it for a little extra time. So you can still use the glue stick. Just keep that in mind. If you're using something that's like a really slick fabric, like a silk or satin, you might want to change your glue to using a tacky glue instead of the glue stick. But the glue stick will work for most types of fabric. I think it would be nice maybe to try something with lace on top, doing a fabric and then laying some lace on top. Be creative with the type of fabric that you use. Um, Kind of have fun with it along the way. All right, so I'm cutting out my squares here. And again, just kind of using that as a pattern. You don't have to have that as a pattern, but it is kind of a good starting place. And whether you're doing the squares from the template or the circle, um, either is either is good. All right, so I've got all my pieces cut out, my patterns here. I don't know why I put them on cardboard. We'll go ahead and get those off. All right. So I'm going to flip mine over here, and I'm just going to take a moment to kind of trace them onto my cardboard. We want something that is somewhat thin, like the cardboard, somewhat thin. If it's too thick, it doesn't always lay really flat when you're trying to wear it. Um, so I'm just using, like I said, that thin cardboard. I'm just going to draw some of my squares. And now I can save this template that I've made if I want to do more. I have the sizes cut out so I can make the same size again if I want to. I'm just kind of drawing them out and then I'm going to cut them. If you are kind of creating your own sizes and shapes too, that's great. You can do that right on your cardboard. I'm using, I made my stencils first because I'm using the template that was offered in the illustrated instructions. But either way is good. Not quite. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but also doesn't have to be six. So if you have five squares that you want to do, or five circles, or stars, that's also good. All right. So now that I got my stencils, I'm going to set my stencils aside, and I'm going to take a moment to cut out my shapes here. And this is what I'm going to use to wrap my fabric around. I'm doing a rounded edge for my squares because when it's a sharp end, sometimes it's a little harder to wrap that fabric around. But you can do that, you can do a sharp edge, a sharp corner. Like I said, just have fun with this process. Maybe there's a leaf shape that you like doing instead. That would be a good one to start. Or maybe you want to do a bunch of hearts. Hearts will be a little harder because you have that kind of divot, that valley at the top, but not impossible. So just kind of have fun with your pattern too, or shape that you're using as your base. again, these don't have to be perfect. Um, the truth is, because we're layering them up, it doesn't have to be like the same shape all the way around. You can see my shapes um, are kind of, shall we say, organic, more organic than exact. But that's okay. I feel like when they're organic like that, um, that it just lets everyone know that it's handmade, right? So I'm just taking my time right now to cut out my base for my pendant. All right. So now we've got our shapes here. Now you can see, again, I'm just going to point out that the outside of my cereal box, it has writing on there. And so what I'm going to use, I'm going to use those as the back. I want to make sure that the solid color is what I'm putting my fabric on top of, because when there is that writing, sometimes it shows through. And so we don't want that. Well, we may want that. There's nothing wrong if you want that. So what I'm going to do now is start bringing my fabric in. Now I've got some fabric scraps here. This is a fun project to do with leftover pieces of fabric like I have here. Or if you have some sentimental fabric, maybe you have some fabric scraps from a quilt that was made for you that holds a lot of meaning, or an old shirt that was worn out but you can't quite get rid of yet, or maybe a pair of pants that a loved one wore when they were alive. It's kind of nice to bring those sentimental fabrics into. So think about that when you're making these pendants as well. It's a nice way to kind of keep them close. So I'm going to start looking at my fabric scraps here. I've got some different sizes. And so I'm just going to, this one is my smallest piece. So I'm probably going to be really careful with where I put this one. Now, what I'm going to do is glue my fabric, my squares onto my fabric. But what I'm going to do is glue the solid color of my cardboard to the back of my fabric. Right? So that solid color part, not the part that has the writing, but that solid color part is going to be glued to the back of my fabric. Right? So what does that look like? I'm going to add some glue here and then just place it. Now, when we place it down on our fabric, we want to give it a little press because that little bit of pressure helps it stick. And then what I want to do, you can see this one is kind of cut already. I want to make sure my fabric square or my fabric piece is kind of close in size to my cardboard. We don't want it super close because what we're going to be doing is wrapping it around. Okay? So what we've done already is we've cut our template, we've cut out the thin cardboard. We're in the process of gluing that thin cardboard to our fabric, and then we're going to trim it where that fabric is kind of slightly larger than the cardboard, because what we're going to do is start to fold over that fabric, and that's what's going to kind of secure it, help secure it. So let's go through now, and I'm just going to start adding, hmm, again, we're wanting to put the solid color on the back of the fabric. So I'm going to, let's see here. I can do one of each. That's what we'll do. All right, so again, putting the solid color part of the cardboard, gluing that down to the back of the fabric. And you can see I'm kind of putting it close to the edge. I'm still leaving that space, giving it a little press when I push it down. Just adding that little bit of glue. Giving it a press. Okay, and I'm going to do my last one here. Nope, that may be too small. I'm going to do my last one there. And again, just as that reminder, we want to make sure that there's still some space around the outside of our shape. And so what I'm going to do, pat my glue real quick, is I'm going to trim my squares. So they're kind of close to the size of my cardboard. And this, again, doesn't have to be perfect. You can see I'm just kind of quickly cutting. Okay, do my last one here. This next part is probably the longest, maybe part, and could be the messiest part. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut little strips all the way around our cardboard, right? So what it's going to do, what it'll look like, is I'm just kind of cutting, it's basically cutting little tabs. I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm literally cutting just to the cardboard from the outside edge, cutting in sections. It doesn't have to be tiny sections. So you can see I've got flaps. I've created flaps. So my next step after I've created those flaps is to glue those flaps down to the cardboard here. So what I'm going to do is start off by adding a little bit of glue to the back of my cardboard. And I'm just going to fold that fabric strip over. Press, fold the fabric strip over, and press. So now it's wrapping around, giving it a little press. And then I'm going to kind of go around, add more glue, and do the same thing. Peel those pieces, fold them over, give them a little press. Then I'm going to come back to my corner piece here, add some glue to that corner piece, and fold it over. And so on the other side, you can see it gives it that nice rounded shape. And so I'm just going to do that all the way down. Glue, and then add those strips. And this one, like I said, is probably the messiest. The messiest one, because you have a better chance of, I guess, a greater chance of getting that glue on your finger. But we're just, you can see, just kind of folding it around. Adding that little bit of glue, giving it a little press. Mm, pulling those ends over. Okay. And so I have folded over all those flaps. So on the front side, I get a nice solid shape with smooth edges. So I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go through now and do that to all my pieces. So if you need to, go ahead and press pause, cut out your pieces, cut those lines, fold them over in glue, and press play when you're ready to move on to the next step. All right. Once you've gotten all your cardboard pieces covered in the fabric, you've got it glued down, we're ready to go on to our next step. Now that last step is probably the easiest and most fun. It's where you get to arrange them however you want them to be. So I'm just going to take mine and just kind of set them. Yeah, so I'm making kind of my pendant shape. Um, it can be however you want it. If you want it in a straight line, if you want it kind of glued down um, in more of a pattern. I'm turning mine so it kind of gives it a diamond shaped instead of a square. Once I have my pieces, I'm going to glue them together. Oh, take the lid off and glue them together. So I've got I'm gluing down, press it, and then glue down your next one. Press it. And do the same with this one. Glue those triangle pieces together. And glue them to my bigger one. And again, this can be however you want it to be. It doesn't have to look like this. This is just what I'm doing. There's so many other ways to design this. I'm just kind of giving it a press. So now I've got my row, my pendants here. So one of the last things that you can do is add a backing to it. Now this backing can be really helpful. You see for my example here, my circles, I have a piece of fabric that I just glued to the back. It just helps hold everything together. So that's one of the things that I can do here. All right. So what I'm going to do is just kind of look at my piece here. Actually, what I'm going to do is this. And I'm going to take my marker again and just kind of draw an outline just so I know where to cut. I want this to be slightly smaller than my fabric pieces. And so I'm going to take my scissors and just do a little trim. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just need something to kind of help hold together our pieces. Just give them that extra security. All right. So I've got my piece here. What I'm going to do is put some glue on the back of my piece. And then lay that piece on top. Press it in. Now I can see there are a couple places I need to trim. So I'm just going to take a moment to kind of trim that down. The good thing about using this glue stick, especially the purple one, is that it goes on pink or purple, but it dries clear. So even if there is a little glue showing, that's okay because it won't be noticeable when it dries. So just kind of give it a little trim where needed. There we go. And then make sure it's pressed together. And then that backing that we just added will help hold it together and give it a little more strength. So now we have our pendant. We can put a pin on it and wear it as a brooch, or we can wear it as a necklace, put it on some cording and wear it as a necklace. But you have really fun, statement-worthy piece. Right, everyone? Well, happy bead making, pendant making. I, I don't know if there's anything else we have to say. So enjoy the project. Enjoy the project. Share pictures if you want. We're always excited to see the work, and happy crafting, everyone. We'll see you soon.